Good evening, and welcome to Outside Inside. Thank you for tuning in and showing your support for the work of First Church Homeless Ministries. And thank you to Bertrand Laurence for that beautiful music we just heard. We'll hear it again later on in the program. I'm Susan Reynolds. I'm a member of the Friday Cafe leadership team, and I'm really pleased to be here to help kick off tonight's program. With us this evening, either in person or pre-recorded, we have Jim Stewart, director of the First Church Shelter, Kate Laser, she's the minister of street outreach at First Church, Dan Smith, senior minister of First Church, Alex Steinert-Evoy and Don Johnson, two of our most dedicated volunteers, and of course our honored guest, Danielle Allen, scholar, author, and longtime advocate for democracy. We're grateful for the chance to hear Dr. Allen's work on housing justice and also to be able to highlight our own work alongside homeless and food insecure neighbors during this ongoing pandemic. Our theme tonight, Outside Inside, has many meanings for us. It's about the justice gap between outsiders and insiders, such as the housing issue between the unhoused and the housed. But it's also about how those of us who are inside can help each other step outside of our usual comfort zones to build common cause with neighbors who have lost access to their basic means of survival. We hope you'll be inspired to join us on this journey, this outside-inside journey. Thanks again for being here. And now for some context, we would like to ask Jim Stewart to give us an update on the homelessness crisis in Massachusetts. Jim?
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight and for your interest and support of the work being done by the First Church Shelter and the Friday Cafe. This coming December will mark the 35th anniversary of the decision made by the First Church Cambridge Congregational that they could not and would not stand by and just talk about how something should be done about the situation faced by our poor and unhoused neighbors. For 35 years, we have offered concrete acts of mercy. Through the shelter we offer, the food and fellowship, and other forms of material aid provided by the Friday Cafe, the people of First Church Cambridge have stepped forward to say that in a community as blessed as Cambridge and in a nation as prosperous as the United States, it is an intolerable scandal that individuals and families should struggle to meet basic human needs that just about all of us here tonight take for granted. More than 2 years ago, when the pandemic descended on us, the people of First Church stepped up once again and partnered with the City of Cambridge to help out by not only maintaining services that were available, but to expand them. And we are proud and grateful to continue in that partnership, a partnership that would not work at all without the support of most of you gathered with us tonight. Many of you have no official connection to the First Church Cambridge, but you've decided that you want to be a partner, that you want to keep the work that is being done by First Church Shelter and the Friday Cafe going, to keep responding to the need that is out there and demonstrates its reality and urgency 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. I know I speak for everyone involved with the work being done at 11 Garden Street that we are deeply grateful for your generous ongoing support. So while I remain grateful, I think we all are aware that there is still much more that requires our attention. More than 2 years into the COVID-19 emergency, our municipal and state leaders have still not found a way to make sure that our unhoused siblings are able to access safe, healthy, non-congregant shelter. Over the past several months, unhoused women and men have been denied access to shelter because, literally, years into a public health emergency, city and state officials acting in our names have failed to commit the resources and secure the space necessary to provide safe, healthy shelter to all who need it. And we should not forget that tonight, 4,000 families, including 8,000 children, an all-time high, are living in homeless shelters across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Our state is still the state with the highest per capita rate of family homelessness in the nation. And there's not much hope on the horizon for those 4,000 families. At the Boston Housing Authority, which has the largest supply of subsidized housing in the state, the waiting list for income-eligible families is 5 years. The waiting list for income-eligible families in other communities like Cambridge is between 6 to 8 years. And tonight we also cannot forget that even as we trudge through the seemingly never-ending plague of coronavirus, opioid overdose deaths here in Massachusetts and across the country are at all-time highs. Here in the Commonwealth, overdose deaths continue to spike, and they've been accompanied with an alarming increase in injection-related infections like hepatitis and HIV. Now, often this tragedy takes place out of sight, but over the past year, we only had to look down Massachusetts Avenue amongst the tents and lean-tos of Mass and Cass to see the deprivation and indignity endured by those dealing with this affliction. So tonight, I'd like to say thank you, of course, for all that you've done over the past several years to be partners in the work of First Church's Homeless Ministries. I say thank you, but we all know that the needs of those who are served by the Homeless Ministries have not lessened, even given our expanded pandemic efforts. Because of that unmet need, I think we all have to agree that there's no going back. Maintaining and expanding service to our community's poor and unhoused has been disruptive and challenging for all of us, but there's no going back. At First Church, amongst lay and ordained leaders, we all know and agree there's no going back. We must stay engaged, and we must continue to express our concern in effective and tangible ways to community members struggling to survive. Those of you who have partnered with us, I hope you also feel that way, the same way we do, that the people we work with and on behalf of still require our sympathy, respect, and assistance. I hope you agree that because of their need, there's really no choice for any of us. There's no going back. We can only move forward and continue responding to that need. So thank you for your attention this evening and for your ongoing support.
Thank you for that reminder, Jim, and for your long record of unspoken advocacy on these issues. Good evening, friends, and once again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Kate Laser. I'm the Minister of Street Outreach here at First Church. I'm also the director of the Friday Cafe. As a faith-based program, we often advocate, but we don't always have much direct influence on public policy. Our role is to stand with those who are hurting, to respond to immediate needs, and to amplify voices that can be hard to hear from City Hall or the State House. And there's another role for us which I've come to think is one of our most impactful, and that is inviting the wider community into our work, creating varieties of ways for neighbors to become directly or indirectly involved, from cooking to serving food, to sharing music or art, to distributing clothing, to just sitting, talking with guests. That personal involvement is powerful. It changes people, a lot of people. In the past year alone, probably hundreds of neighbors have participated in our programs in different ways. Some have made bag lunches, some have cooked dinner for the guys in the shelter, some have knitted hats. A physical therapist set up her portable therapy table on the lawn and offered healing touch on summer Fridays. A klezmer band came and played an hour-long set. Cub Scouts baked cookies, and high school students cooked casseroles. A local artist bought Dunkin' Donuts gift cards so that guests could have a chance to get out of the cold for a while, a ticket inside. Every person who has come into contact with our programs this way is someone who can potentially become a part of social and political transformation. So when I talk about the work we've been doing this past year or two of the pandemic, I invite you to hear this not as the activities of a few church staff, but as really a community effort and an expression of our whole community's longing for every member to thrive and know that they matter. This is part of what we mean when we talk about outside and inside. Yes, we're talking about people who are bringing people who are on the outside into housing, into ever fuller community and belonging. But we're also talking about helping those of us with roofs over our heads step out and connect with our neighbors and share what we have. When we do that, the experience changes us. So just a few snapshots of the past 12 months. The First Church Shelter is now in its 24th month of pandemic mode, operating around the clock instead of just overnight, offering 3 meals a day instead of 2, and experiencing a whole lot of togetherness. We are at full capacity with 14 men, but we've expanded into adjacent building spaces for pandemic distance. So what happens in the shelter during those daytime hours? Well, some guests pursue online life skills training or take classes in English as a second language. Some study for their GED or search for jobs online. One guest helped out at the Friday Cafe many weeks, while another volunteered at a local farmer's market. Yet another likes to walk to Lexington and back to stay fit. Everyone works on their long-term housing, but it's incredibly challenging. Housing is, as you've heard, in very short supply, and what there is often comes with insurmountable barriers. We here at First Church recently partnered with the city to hire a housing navigator to help steer people through the complicated application process, but guests may wait a year or two or longer to find a place, especially if they have any kind of a past record. Our average shelter stay is getting longer and longer. One especially bright spot during the pandemic has been the homemade meals that neighbors have been delivering each evening. Both the Friday Cafe and the shelter have online sign-ups where you can commit to preparing a meal, or in the case of the Friday Cafe, part of a meal in your own kitchen and dropping it off. The food is homey and delicious, and guests just love it. So big thanks to all of you who have taken a turn preparing food for one of our programs. The Friday Cafe, which I direct, looks back wistfully to the days when we used to gather in the church hall on Fridays, around tables, sharing a meal, getting to know each other. We are hoping to get back to indoor life one day, maybe even later this year, we will see. But since March 2020, we've been mostly outdoors. When case numbers are high, we serve bag lunches in front of the church. When they're a little lower, as they were from September through December, we go hybrid, serving homemade food cooked for us by neighbors, packed in to-go containers. When we were first getting ready to make that switch to hybrid, we weren't sure we'd be able to enlist enough volunteers. We had been operating in emergency mode for so long. But we were soon flooded with help and with amazing homemade food. We are planning to return to hybrid on February 18th, so look out for our 2 signups to reopen soon. In addition to a nutritious meal, the Friday Cafe offers clothing, toiletries, sleeping bags, and other essential gear. And we continue to set up chairs on the lawn all winter long if it's not raining or snowing, because people need community. Many of the folks we see on Fridays are longtime friends of ours, but we meet new people too. Like the couple who came for lunch about a week ago, the day before the big blizzard, newly homeless for the very first time in their lives, and having recently lost clothing, paperwork, and medications to a state police bulldozer. They had no idea where they were going to go during the storm, and we weren't able to be much help since the city had not put any emergency provisions in place. But we gave them some supplies and told them to try South Station. We'd heard that security doesn't kick people out if there's going to be a big storm. Only later we found out that South Station, in fact, closed that night at 11 p.m., just as the storm was getting started. I don't know where officials thought that people were going to go that night. Our shower program, launched in summer 2020 with funding from the city, continues to fill a major gap in available services. We started with mobile showers in a Harvard Square parking lot, but since the fall, we've entered a new partnership with University Lutheran Church to staff their showers during the daytime when their night shelter is closed. The showers are open 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, and they are a godsend to the 50 or 60 guests who make use of them each week. Finally, I want to say a word about what a privilege it has been to host pop-up vaccination clinics on Friday. The Public Health Department has been offering flu clinics at the Friday Cafe for a few years now, so when COVID vaccines became available, we were ready. What an amazing gift to be able to offer those life-saving vaccines to some of the most vulnerable members of our community. Dozens of guests and volunteers received first and second Moderna vaccinations and a later booster shot. Big shout out to our city health workers and firefighters for running a really flawless operation. So that's our year in a nutshell. We would love for you to visit firstchurchincambridge.org if you'd like to get more involved. Firstchurchcambridge.org is the correct URL. Just look for us under the Justice tab. And now it seems that Dan Smith and Jim Stewart have something that they would like to add.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Reverend Dan Smith, the senior minister here at First Church. And before we come to the heart of our program, our keynote address, we would like to offer a recognition. Those of you who tuned in last year may recall that we offered Jim Stewart an Uncommon Service Award for his uncommon service to the community. Jim, as we know, has been a tireless advocate and has been working night and day, 24/7, for the shelter and for the wider community of unhoused neighbors. And that was a well-deserved recognition. This year, we would like to recognize Reverend Kate Laser, our Minister of Street Outreach. And I would just like to begin by lifting up her role in creating some of those partnerships. Not only does Kate work wonders inside this building with volunteers and guests, and more recently on the threshold of the doors of the inside and outside of this building, serving and creating community, but she has also worked over the years, and especially this past year, to create partnerships with outside organizations and individuals, organizations like Community Cooks and Harvard Epworth United Methodist Church and so many others. But the one that she just mentioned that I'm particularly moved by is the work that she has done to build a relationship with the Cambridge Public Health Department. Not only has Kate been a tireless minister and advocate and community builder, she has also, I believe, by virtue of this partnership, saved lives by creating an opportunity. Some for the first vaccinations that were available beyond that healthcare worker and first responder group. Kate made sure that the guests and the volunteers of the Friday Cafe were offered clinics for vaccinations and booster shots and flu shots and meningitis shots. It's been remarkable to see that outreach and to see that genuinely life-saving work. Jim?
So I couldn't think of a way to get outside into an award, so I decided I would take the initiative and present you, Kate, on behalf of all of us involved with the Homeless Ministries, with the No Going Back Award. And we want to present this to Kate, Minister of Street Outreach, First Church Cambridge Congregational UCC, in recognition of her efforts to maintain and extend services to Cambridge's most vulnerable in the ongoing pandemic. So, Kate and Friday Cafe, you deserve the recognition, and thank you for all you're doing.
And if only you all were here, we'd be having a rousing applause right now, so we invite you to snap and clap it up at home, please.
Thank you for this honor.
Kate and Jim have been a dynamic force at the heart of our homeless ministries here at First Church, and we could not be more grateful. I could not be more privileged to have the opportunity to work with them here at First Church and to watch the extraordinary work that they are doing in the community. And now we come to the centerpiece of our time together and our keynote address. Danielle Allen is the James Bryant Conant University Professor at Harvard University and Director of Harvard's Edmund J. Safra Center for Ethics. She is a political theorist who has published broadly in democratic theory, political sociology, and the history of political thought. Widely known for her work on justice and citizenship in both ancient Athens and modern America, Allen is the author of The World of Prometheus, The Politics of Punishing in Democratic Athens, 2000, Talking to Strangers, Anxieties of Citizenship Since Brown versus the Board of Education, 2004, Why Plato Wrote, 2010. Our Declaration, a reading of the Declaration of Independence and the Defense of Equality, 2014. Education and Equality, 2016. And Cuz, The Life and Times of Michael A., 2017. She is a former chair of the Mellon Foundation Board, past chair of the Pulitzer Prize Board, and member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences and the American Philosophical Society. She has chaired numerous commissions and is lead author on influential policy roadmaps, including Pursuing Excellence on a Foundation of Inclusion, Roadmap to Pandemic Resilience, and Our Common Purpose, Reinventing American Democracy for the 21st Century. She was for many years a contributing columnist for the Washington Post, and she writes for The Atlantic. As if all of that were not enough, as you may have heard, she is also currently running for governor of Massachusetts. And here I need to take care and to be clear that Dr. Allen is not here in her role as a candidate. This is not a campaign event, and you are not about to hear a stump speech. Far from it, as you will soon hear. In November, Dr. Allen came to the Friday Cafe as a volunteer, without any heads up that she was coming. No cameras, no fanfare. In fact, if you are watching closely, you might have seen her in one of those slides at the beginning slideshow, and she was one of the crowd, sharing love of that community and cafe. She came to serve. She came to be a caring neighbor, and thus began our connection with her. And in addition to all of the other accolades, it is why it is such a great privilege to welcome once again to First Church Dr. Allen. Friends and siblings, I introduce to you Dr. Danielle Allen.
Good evening, members of First Church and supporters of First Church Homeless Ministries. It is terrific to be with you this evening. Thank you so much, Reverend Smith, for the generous introduction. Thank you, Reverend Laser and Jim Stewart, for your phenomenal leadership, your service and support for those in need, for your community, for showing the path for all of us. It's an honor to be with you tonight. I am here as a public intellectual, an advocate for democracy and economic justice. I'm also here as a person of faith. And so I'm going to spend some time this evening sharing reflections with you on a passage that's always meant a lot to me, and I believe has a lot to say to us as we think about the challenges of housing and justice. You know this passage well. It's Matthew 6. Behold the fowls of the air, for they sow not, neither do they reap, nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feedeth them. Are ye not much better than they? And why take ye thought for raiment? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin. And yet I say unto you that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Wherefore, if God so clothe the grass of the field, which today is and tomorrow is cast into the oven, shall he not much more clothe you, O ye of little faith? I have to admit, when I was a kid and sat in church, every time I heard this parable come round, I was completely befuddled. I didn't get it. I just couldn't figure out how could it possibly be that all I needed was faith and I would be clothed. All I needed was faith and I would be fed. It just didn't make any sense. And I struggled and struggled to understand. The pandemic, for all of its darkness, has brought me to understanding of this parable. We all remember when the pandemic hit, how dark those times were. They still are, so dark and hard. But in that March of 2020, in 2 weeks here in Massachusetts, we went from having one of the lowest unemployment rates in the country to having one of the highest. We're the only state that made that full swing. And hunger soared. It was profound, the need. And in that darkness, people stepped in. First Church Homeless Ministries found a way to keep feeding people despite the pandemic. You adjusted, you adapted, you changed the order for how people could enter and use the space, introduced social distancing, and you met the need. Gladys, Vega, and Chelsea fed thousands. The Cambridge Community Center stepped up. Restaurants started shifting what they were doing with their food supplies to get food to those in need. And this made clear to me the core of the parable. None of us is a single person. Each of us is a part of a community. And it is the power of the community to see one another, to feel love, the connection to other human beings. That is what God has graced us with, and means that we can, in those moments of need, find the support that's necessary. But in that dark time, there were those rays of light, but across the country, the whole was not light. There was plenty of darkness. And the other lesson that came home to me was how far away we are, broadly across our whole country, from feeling that sense of commitment to each other, to recognizing that we've got to come together as a community to meet those basic needs. And so here in Massachusetts, we still feel the pressing need. We feel it now around housing all the time. We read stories in the news about Mass and Cass in Boston and people living in tent encampments there, people struggling with substance use disorder. But the challenge of homelessness isn't just there in Boston, it's all over the Commonwealth. People are living in tents in the woods in Western Massachusetts. Working people are living in the woods on Martha's Vineyard, leaving encampments in the morning to go to work. And in Boston, children in public schools, the numbers of homeless children are soaring. Housing is the basic anchor for human dignity. When the pandemic hit, one of the first things that Cambridge nonprofits had to do was come together and make sure those without housing had a place to use the bathroom. The need is that basic. The support for human dignity of a roof over one's head, that basic. The normal places of respite and refuge weren't available. The library was closed. And that drives home the point of how fundamental it is for humans' ability to thrive, that we have a place to call home, a roof over our head where we can eat, we can get clean, we can rest. Everything else flows from that. I know this firsthand because I have over many years wrestled to help my cousins and my big extended family reconnect to housing in times of trouble. I am from a huge family. My dad had 11 brothers and sisters, so there are countless numbers of us cousins. And at some point or another, somebody is always in trouble. But there's always a big group of us linking arms to help and provide support. So my cousin Nicholas, I'm thinking of, my cousin Nicholas, who struggled with substance use disorder over many years and would often reach a point where he was ready to get going again, get a foundation under his feet, seek a job, and always housing was the challenge. He didn't have any money saved up, nothing for that first month's rent, no way to convince a landlord that his credit was good. So we would work and try to find inexpensive hotels he could stay in 1 week after the next while he secured a job, tried to rebuild his credit, tried to build up some savings for that first month's rent and last month's rent. And always, it was only when we could get that stable housing, finally that apartment, that Nicholas would be able to stand again and walk forward. So housing is about human dignity. It is about people's ability to chart a course in life, to hear their passion and their purpose, and do the work they need to do in order to move forward on that pathway. But it's also work we can do for and with each other to make this possible for each other. And housing isn't just about human dignity. I mean, as if that's not enough. That should be enough, that housing should be about human dignity, that we would find a way to solve our housing challenges. It should be enough that it is what every person needs in order to move forward in their life. But housing is also core to the health of our economy. Ask any business owner, and they will tell you they cannot keep a business functioning if the people who work for them can't keep a stable roof over their head. And kids can't learn in school if they don't have a stable place to lay their head. We need kids learning. We need people able to stay in their jobs for the economy. So everything, again, from basic human dignity, the question of whether we feel and share our love from one another, to the question of whether or not together we prosper, comes down to housing. Now, when we face the challenge of food insecurity, we linked arms and we stepped up. And we can still understand the pain and difficulty of the moment in March 2020. We talked to folks who did feed people, talked to Reverend Laser, talked to Gladys Vega. You can hear the pain in people's voices when they describe what it was like to run out of food before the line was done. We are still in that deep place of pain and need when it comes to housing. And so in the same way that we committed around food security, it's time to commit around housing. And here I want to take us back to the lilies, the birds and the lilies, because here too I think they have the answer for us. How is it that we are provided for? Why should we have faith in that provision? Partly it's because we are part of communities. We human beings feel love, express love, share love. We can act together on behalf of each other. And from that comes the chance of provision. But there's another message in this story. Those fowls are in the air. The birds have a place. They have trees to land in. Those lilies are growing in a plot of land. They have a place. They have a home. Their provision is possible, the birds and the lilies, because they have a home. And so that is what we have to see fundamentally. And in the same way that we have an abundance of food in our society, and there should be no food security, we have an abundance of places, an abundance of land. There should be no housing insecurity. But we've got to commit and see that. Now, here's the question I've got for you. If we know how to take abundance of food and turn that into provision, what do we have to learn to take an abundance of land and places and to turn that into provision? There is a challenge because at this point in time, we have a beautiful globe, a beautiful planet to think about as well, to think about how we sustain our beautiful lands, keep nature healthy and resilient and sustainable for all of us. This is not a moment in time where we say, go west and pick out a plot of land expropriated from indigenous people and build something. This is not a time for that. This is a time for making places without harming the planet and without expropriating from those who are vulnerable and endangered. So what does that mean? Here's the basic truth. We have to see the places where we're hoarding land. We have to commit to not hoarding land in the same way that we do not hoard food. This is hard. This is hard. We've gotten very used to hoarding land. We've gotten very used to the idea that success in life is about the size of our yard. We've gotten very used to the idea that there should be a whole lot of room between us and our neighbors. But the message of this parable is that if we have faith in community, if we have faith in being together, we will be provided for. Provision comes from that faith we have in the value and beauty of being together in community. And that means with land too, it's time. It's time for us to see a moral responsibility, to see the beauty and value in density. Here in Cambridge, we're pretty good at that actually. We've been making a lot of progress. We definitely still have struggles, but all over the Commonwealth, we've got to commit to sharing the abundance of space that some of us have in the same way that we share our abundance of food. So it's for that reason that I'm so pleased to be able to be with you this evening and reflect with you about Matthew 6. Consider the lilies, how they grow, for they grow in a place. And I realize as a kid, that was actually what I noticed about the parable ultimately, and I just couldn't put the pieces together. I couldn't quite get it. How could I just have faith and be provided for? But I knew that the thing about the lilies, the something special about the lilies, was they had that place to grow in. So whenever you hear that passage in parable, I want you to remember, we, the human community, a loving peoplehood, loving to one another, need to share our places so that there are places for all. Thank you for your great work, First Church. It's an honor to be with you.
Thanks so much to Danielle Allen for her clarity of vision and her deep, compassionate grounding in the lives of real people. Each time I listen to her speak, I feel a surge of hope, and I hope you felt some of that too. We're so grateful to Dr. Allen for taking time out of her very busy schedule, first to volunteer at the Friday Cafe with her team, and then to come talk to us about housing justice. We thank Dr. Allen for the blessing of her time and talent. I'm Alex Steiner-Devoy, and I'm a proud member of the Friday Cafe leadership team. One theme that came through so clearly in Dr. Allen's remarks is that problems like food insecurity or a lack of affordable housing affect everyone in the community, and therefore they must be addressed in a community way. Tonight, you've heard about how individuals can come together to build community and to make our homeless ministries programs stronger and more useful to the people who rely on them. However, it's not only people power that makes this happen. And so here we go. This year, it is my privilege to ask for your money. Many of you have become a part of our community by giving your time, energy, and money, and you know how appreciative we are. Yet, that does not mean I'm not asking you. I am asking everyone, and by that I mean not only those who are here on live stream with us, but those people who may say to you, "What can I do?" I'm asking that you give and then spread the word. We'll accept anything. Unlike what our ex-president likes to say, size does not matter. Just as one pair of gloves can make an impact on a person's survival on any given day, so can a small donation. We are a very small organization, and so please know every dollar goes directly to funding our programs, to our shelter, to our shelter's computers, kitchen appliances, utilities, and of course, improvements and repairs to our hardworking shelter spaces, including our 20-year-old kitchen, staffing and supplies to meet the needs of 100 Friday Cafe guests each week, from hot plates to takeout containers and to the very basics of daily survival. Warm socks, underwear, toothpaste, and most importantly, hot chocolate on these cold winter Friday afternoons. Now, I know you have your wallets out. Whoops, I'm dating myself with that. Perhaps you have your phones out and are ready to go. But before I say ready, set, go, and give you some directions, I'd like to close with these final words from someone whom our world lost a few weeks ago, the beloved Bishop Desmond Tutu. It seems like a lot of us are losing hope, so please listen to these words, and maybe you can be comforted by them. Do your little bit of good where you are. It's those little bits of good put together that can overwhelm the world. Now it's your time to give. In a moment, a magic slide is going to appear on your screen with a few giving options: text, online, or by check. As you decide what you will give, please enjoy the beautiful music of Bertrand Laurence once again. Then we'll be back with a few closing words. We thank you in advance for your generous support.
Thank you. From all of us at Homeless Ministries, thank you for supporting us with your presence and your gifts. Thank you for being a community of compassion and justice. I'm joined by my husband, Don Johnson, recent co-chair of the Shelter Oversight Committee and a regular volunteer at the Friday Cafe, to close tonight's program with a round of heartfelt thanks.
Here are just a few of the individuals and organizations who have been a part of our work this year. Thank you to the First Church congregation and staff for their unfailing support, both administrative and building related.
Our hardworking shelter and shower staff.
Our amazingly dedicated teams of Friday Cafe and shelter volunteers.
The City of Cambridge, which continues to partner with us in so many different ways.
Our local partner organizations, including Community Cooks, Harvard Epworth United Methodist Church, University Lutheran Church, the Harvard Square Churches Meals Program, the Cambridge Public Health Department, the Cambridge Somerville Health Alliance, Club 4 at Cambridge Ridge and Latin High School, and a local ensemble, Blue Heron and the Seraphim Singers, for making their concerts free to guests of our programs.
For the dozens and dozens of home cooks, soup makers, bakers, and bag lunch makers who together have supplied over 200 meals a week for Shelter and Friday Cafe guests. You all are just incredible.
Knitters of hats and generous donors of clothing, supplies, and holiday treats, including Second Chances Incorporated, St. Catherine of Siena Church in Simsbury, Connecticut, Old Cambridge Baptist Church, the Harvard School of Continuing Education, the Seraphim Singers for the annual Christmas coat drive on our behalf, and many individual donors.
All those who have made financial contributions, large and small, over the past year.
Dr. Danielle Allen for sharing her wisdom and vision with us this evening.
Tom Hathaway of smallsteeple.com, the creative genius behind our graphics.
Bertrand Lawrence for the wonderful music we've been hearing this evening.
And to all those who helped make this event happen, especially Alex Steinert Evoy, Sue Reynolds, Don Johnson, Teresa Norris, and Devin Hansen. And of course, our very special thanks go out to all of you for taking the time to join us this evening. We hope that next year we will be able to gather and celebrate in person. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Meanwhile, we hope you'll continue to find ways of participating in our programs, of staying connected. If you'd like to learn more, or if you'd like to get in touch with one of us, we invite you to visit the Homeless Ministries website. Just go to firstchurchcambridge.org and look for us under the Justice tab. We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for your gifts, and may you have a hopeful and a healthy 2022. Good night.
Thank you.